In a sod dugout on the Kansas plains in 1867, a woman 8 months pregnant reached into the bedding and pulled out a dead rattlesnake with her bare hands. Her 2 living children were still asleep. She had no neighbor within a day's ride, no doctor within 50 miles, and no one in the world coming to help her. She dropped the snake outside the door and went back to work. The movies gave the frontier wife 2 roles: the helpless woman waiting to be rescued, or the sunbonnet saint who smiled through everything. Both versions are lies. The diaries these women left behind tell a story so raw, so physically brutal, that publishers and studios spent a century making sure you never heard it. 9 truths are on this list. One of them is worse than all the others, but here is the question. Was the worst one the horror you could see, or the one Hollywood never showed at all? Now, before we go any further, tap that subscribe button. Keep watching. You do not want to miss where this one ends. Between 1840 and 1890, roughly 350,000 women crossed the plains or settled the frontier territories. Their husbands are in the land records. Their own names often are not. What we know about their daily lives comes almost entirely from private diaries that survived by accident. Lillian Schlissel collected 103 of them. Kenneth Holmes published 11 volumes. The women who wrote these pages had no idea anyone would ever read them. That is exactly why they told the truth. We are not going to the movies for this. We are going to the women who were there, in their own handwriting. And what they described will make the Hollywood version look like a bedtime story. Number 9. The food she served and the flies she could not stop. Lydia Allen Rudd crossed the plains in 1852 and kept a diary every day. She describes weevils in the flour as ordinary, meat turning green within hours, cooking over buffalo chip fires that flavored everything with the taste of dung smoke. There was no refrigeration. A slaughtered hog drew flies within minutes in summer heat. A frontier wife skimmed maggots from the salt pork barrel and served what was underneath, because the other option was nothing at all. Amelia Stewart Knight, crossing the plains pregnant with her 8th child in 1853, records feeding 7 children from a wagon bed in the rain. The fuel was too wet to burn. The food was half raw. She served it anyway. Today, the average American throws away over $400 of groceries a year. On the trail, a woman fed her family food she knew could kill them, because starvation was the only certainty and contamination was just a chance. Number 8. Her teeth were falling out of her head. Every pregnancy leached calcium from a woman's bones and teeth. A woman who bore 6 or 8 children could lose a tooth with each one. By 40, many frontier wives had few teeth left at all. The old saying was not folklore: a tooth for every child. Dr. Bethania Owens Adair, one of the first licensed female physicians in Oregon, describes pulling teeth from her own patients with blacksmith pliers and no anesthesia. No frontier dentist was coming. A husband or a neighbor held her down and pulled. The pain was simply endured. In the Sears Roebuck catalog of the 1890s, a set of porcelain dentures cost about $10. A homestead wife who needed them was earning nothing. Under the law, every cent she touched belonged to her husband. Remember that. We are coming back to it. Number 7. Menstruation with nothing that exists to help her. Catherine Hahn crossed the plains in 1849 and is one of the only diarists who references the subject at all. She describes the difficulty of managing what she calls the monthly trouble on the trail. No privacy, no clean water, no product of any kind. Commercial menstrual products did not reach the American market until the 1890s. For 50 years of frontier settlement, women used rags, scraps of worn-out clothing, or nothing. They did this while hauling water, walking 15 miles beside a wagon, plowing sod, and nursing infants. Schlissel noted the near-total silence on this subject across all 103 diaries she collected. The taboo was so deep that women recording their most private thoughts still could not write the words. The silence itself is the evidence. The body did not pause because the culture refused to speak about it. Number 6. The vermin that owned the house. Molly Dorsey Sanford kept a diary through the late 1850s in Nebraska Territory. She describes bedbugs falling from the sod ceiling onto sleeping faces in the dark, snakes nesting inside the dirt walls, centipedes dropping into the cookpot. A sod house was not built. It was cut from the earth and roofed with grass. It was also a living habitat. Lice, fleas, bedbugs, and rattlesnakes lived in the walls and the ceiling. When it rained, the roof turned to mud and dripped insects and filth into the food, the bedding, and the children's hair. A wife could sweep and scrub and boil the linens from dawn to dark, and by nightfall, the vermin were back. She fought that war every single day. She never once won it. Is the worst truth on this list a physical one? Or is it something else entirely? Keep that question close. We are not done. Number 5. The chamber pot at 3 in the morning in a blizzard. No indoor plumbing reached most rural homes until well into the 20th century. A chamber pot sat beside the bed. An outhouse stood 40 or 50 yards from the house. In winter, in the northern plains, the walk to the privy was through knee-deep snow and below zero wind. A wife emptied and scrubbed that pot for every member of the family, every morning, with cold water and bare hands. At frontier army posts like Fort Laramie, officers' wives wrote letters home describing the stench of the post privies as inescapable in the summer heat. And those were the privileged women, the ones with orderlies and servants. The homestead wife had no one but herself. Number 4. Wash day was the hardest labor she did all week. Monday, every week, without exception. The process went like this. Haul water from the well or the creek. At 8 pounds per gallon, a single wash for a family of 6 required roughly 50 gallons. That is 400 pounds of water carried by hand before the first garment touched the washboard. Heat it over an open fire. Shave soap from a block of lye made from wood ash and rendered animal fat. Scrub every piece on a ridged board until the dirt broke loose. Wring it by hand. Hang it. Start again. 10 to 12 hours. The lye soap cleaned the cloth. It also ate skin. A washerwoman's hands were cracked, raw, and bleeding by evening, week after week, year after year. Hollywood shows a frontier wife in a clean dress. It never shows the 12-hour day that made the dress clean, or the hands that paid for it. Number 3. Childbirth in filth alone, with no one coming. Amelia Stewart Knight gave birth to her 8th child on September 17, 1853. The day after her wagon reached the Columbia River in Oregon. She had walked and ridden across the entire continent for 5 months, pregnant, caring for 7 children. Her diary entry for the birth is 2 sentences long. Before germ theory reached common practice in the 1880s, puerperal fever, what they called childbed fever, killed roughly 1 woman in every 8 births in some frontier county. The 1850 through 1870 census mortality schedules record it as a leading cause of death for women of childbearing age in Western territories. There was no hospital. Often no midwife, no trained doctor within 100 miles. The delivery happened on the same bed, in the same room where the family ate and slept. If the birth went wrong, a breech, a hemorrhage, there was no intervention. She lived or she did not. Dr. Bethania Owens Adair was married at 14 and bore a child at 15 in a remote Oregon cabin. She nearly died. Years later, she became a physician specifically because of what she survived and what she watched other women go through. Today, about 700 women die in childbirth each year in the United States, and that number is considered a crisis. On the frontier, it was Tuesday. Number 2. She was not a person under the law. Sir William Blackstone wrote it into English common law, and every American territory carried it forward. By marriage, the husband and wife are one person in law. That is, the very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during the marriage. That is not a paraphrase. That is the doctrine of couverture, word for word. A married woman in the territories could not own property in her own name, could not sign a contract, could not keep her own wages, could not sue or be sued, could not retain custody of her own children if the marriage ended. Her husband owned her labor, her earnings, her inheritance. In legal terms, her body. New York passed the first Married Women's Property Act in 1848. Wyoming Territory gave women the vote in 1869. But for the great majority of frontier wives between 1840 and 1880, coverture was the operating law. A woman who fled a violent husband had no legal claim to her own children. Every physical horror on this list, the teeth, the vermin, the childbirth, happened inside a legal cage that said the woman enduring it was not a legal person. She could not leave. She could not own what she built, and she could not protect her children from the man the law said owned them all. Number 1. She buried her own children, and then she did it again. The 1850 through 1880. Census mortality schedules tell the story in numbers. Child mortality under the age of 5 ran between 1 in 4 and 1 in 3 across many frontier counties. Cholera, dysentery, measles, diphtheria, scarlet fever. A scratch that became an infection with no medicine to fight it. Schlissel's collected diaries contain entries that are among the most devastating primary documents in American history. A woman on the trail writes a single line: "The baby died this morning." The next day's entry records the miles traveled. A mother sewed the burial clothes from her own scraps of fabric. A father dug the grave if he was there. If he was not, she dug it herself. On the trail, the grave was beside the road, unmarked or marked with a board that would not last a single season. She walked away from it and kept moving west because the wagon train did not stop for grief. And here is the truth that sits beneath every other truth on this list. She was almost always pregnant with the next child while burying the last. No birth control existed, no legal right to refuse her husband under coverture. The cycle was pregnancy, birth, survival, or death of the child, and then pregnancy again. Schlissel found that the average frontier wife bore between 7 and 9 children. Many buried 2 or 3 of them before the youngest learned to walk. This is number 1, not because it is the most physically revolting truth on the list, because it is the one the movies could never touch. You can film a dirty kitchen. You can film a sod house full of snakes. You cannot film a woman walking away from a small mound of dirt beside a trail in Nebraska, knowing she will do it again and having no power on earth to stop it. So who built the legend that hid all of this? 3 hands shaped it. First, Laura Ingalls Wilder, whose Little House books were published in the 1930s and 40s and edited by her daughter Rose Wilder Lane to remove the harshest material. The poverty, the near starvation, the infant death. The books that taught 3 generations what a frontier wife looked like were deliberately, carefully softened before they ever reached a reader. Second, Hollywood. From John Ford forward, the frontier wife was a set piece, a face in a window, a woman pouring coffee. Even Gunsmoke ran for 20 years and never once showed what wash day cost a woman's hands. Third, the culture itself, which decided that the toughness was the story worth telling and that the conditions which demanded it were too ugly to remember. The sanitizing was not an accident. It was a choice made by publishers and studios and school boards who decided the audience could not handle what the women themselves had lived through and written down in their own handwriting. So here is my answer to the question I asked at the start. The most devastating truth on this list was not the one you could see. It was not the teeth or the chamber pot or the flies in the flour. It was number 1. The endless, inescapable cycle of birth and burial inside a legal system that said she was not a person. That is the truth the legend never told, because there is no way to put it on a movie poster or stitch it onto a sunbonnet. Somewhere in Kansas, in Nebraska, in Oregon, there are small graves beside trails that have been plowed under for over 100 years. The women who dug them left behind a handful of diary pages that nobody was ever supposed to read. Those pages are the only proof that any of it happened at all. Which truth would you have feared most? Tell me below. And if you want the real story behind another piece of frontier life the movies got wrong, the next one is already waiting for you.